What if I told you that one of the greatest stories ever told in the history of cinema is not actually about escaping a prison?
Wait, not about a prison? I mean, that's literally the plot, right?
Well, yeah, but on a deeper level, it's actually about escaping despair.
Oh, wow. I mean, that completely shifts the entire paradigm, doesn't it?
It really does.
Like, when you look at it through that lens, it stops being a story about a concrete building with iron bars. It becomes, a mirror reflecting how we deal with the invisible prisons in our own minds.
Absolutely. And welcome back to Easy English. In today's deep dive, our mission is going much further than just memorizing a list of useful English vocabulary words.
Yeah, though you are definitely going to walk away with a massive new toolkit of language today.
Oh, for sure. But our real goal, the reason we sit down to do this, is to help you upgrade your life a little bit every single day. We firmly believe that the stories you consume and the specific words you choose to describe those stories actively shape how you perceive the world.
They really do. Language is basically the architecture of human thought.
Right.
It's not just a mechanism for, ordering a coffee or asking for directions. It's the framework we use to process really complex emotions.
Exactly. And hey, if you want to keep exploring how language shapes reality with us, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss a deep dive.
Yeah, please do. Because when you expand your vocabulary, especially around beautiful or, profound themes, you're literally expanding your brain's capacity to navigate those themes in your own personal life.
I love how you put that. And that brings us to the centerpiece of today's deep dive. We are talking about a movie that has genuinely touched millions of hearts across the globe.
It really has transcended all cultural boundaries and language barriers.
It totally has. We're talking about the Shawshank Redemption.
Such an amazing film.
For those who might not know, it's a timeless cinematic masterpiece. It focuses on hope, on extreme patience, and just the quiet, unyielding power of the human spirit.
Yeah, the human spirit is really at the core of it.
But before we get into the plot, I have to ask you a structural question. Because I'm incredibly enthusiastic about using powerful, famous stories to learn English.
It's the best way to learn, honestly.
Right. I've always found that if you can attach a new vocabulary word to a character you love or to a scene that makes you cry, your brain just holds onto that word forever.
It creates a permanent emotional anchor.
Exactly. But why this specific movie? I mean, why are we using a story set in a dark, cold, violently terrifying prison as the ultimate vehicle for learning uplifting English vocabulary?
That is the perfect question to start with, actually, because on the surface, it feels like a massive contradiction.
Totally.
If we want to learn about hope and freedom, why would we look in the darkest, most oppressive place imaginable? But the answer lies in the psychological power of contrast.
Okay, contrast. Tell me more about that.
Think about how diamonds are formed. You don't get a diamond by letting carbon just sit gently in the sunshine.
Right, that just makes warm dirt.
Exactly. You get a diamond by burying it deep underground and applying an excruciating, crushing amount of pressure and heat over a really long period of time.
Oh, wow. I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, so the Shawshank Redemption is that crushing pressure. The prison environment in this story represents the absolute worst aspects of human suffering.
Like total isolation, cruelty.
Yep, the stripping away of your identity and just the constant threat of hopelessness. So when a theme like hope or friendship finally emerges in that brutal environment, it isn't just a nice, warm feeling.
It's a diamond.
Exactly, it's a diamond. Its impact is magnified 1,000 times because of the pressure surrounding it.
I see exactly what you mean. The darkness isn't just a background setting. It's the pressure that forces the light to become something solid and unbreakable.
Right. Because if a character is happy in a comfortable, easy life, their happiness doesn't really teach as much.
No, it's just nice.
But if a character maintains their humanity in a place that is literally designed to destroy it, that teaches us everything.
And for you, the listener joining us right now, it's exactly like the struggle of learning a new language.
Oh, that's a great connection.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you feel completely lost in the dark. You're staring at a page of English grammar, and it just feels like a wall you can't climb over.
We've all been there with language learning. It's so frustrating.
But when you finally experience that breakthrough, that aha moment when a native speaker understands you perfectly, the joy of that moment is entirely created by the intense struggle that came before it.
That is the exact mechanism. And when we give our listeners the specific English vocabulary to describe these uplifting concepts, words like, resilience, endurance, liberation.
Those words carry so much more emotional weight.
Exactly, because we are anchoring them to a story of overcoming extreme hardship. Learning English through a narrative of survival makes the language itself feel empowering.
You aren't just learning words, you are learning the vocabulary of survival.
The vocabulary of survival. I love that.
So let's dive right into the narrative foundation. We're going to start with the story of Andy Dufresne now.
Right, our main character.
We want to ensure that every listener, no matter where they are on their language journey, has a crystal clear understanding of the plot.
You really need this context because the vocabulary, the deep analysis we're going to do later, completely relies on knowing the sequence of events.
Exactly. A solid narrative foundation is absolutely essential. So the story begins in the late 1940s with a man named Andy Dufresne.
And Andy is a vice president at a large bank in Portland, Maine.
Right. He is highly educated, very successful, and he lives a comfortable, upper-class life.
He's a man who understands numbers, logic, and order. Everything makes sense in his world.
But in a single night, his entire ordered universe just shatters. He is arrested and accused of murdering his wife and the man she was having an affair with.
It is the ultimate nightmare. He's pulled from his comfortable life and just thrown into a courtroom.
And here is the crucial detail that sets up the entire psychology of the film. Andy claims he is completely innocent.
Yeah, he admits he was angry, he admits he was drunk, but he insists he did not pull the trigger.
However, the circumstantial evidence is stacked heavily against him. The judge doesn't just find him guilty, he hands Andy 2 back-to-back life sentences.
Meaning he is never getting out. So this quiet, logical banker is sent to Shawshank State Prison for the rest of his natural life.
Now, to really understand the gravity of this, we have to look closely at the environment versus the man.
Right, because Shawshank Prison is not just a building. It is an active, malevolent force.
It's almost like a monster itself.
It really is. It's described as a hard, cold, unforgiving place. It is architecturally and psychologically designed to break the human spirit.
And the guards, particularly the chief guard, Captain Hadley, are brutally violent.
The walls are thick stone, the cells are tiny and dark, and the days just stretch on endlessly with mindless, crushing labor.
It's an environment engineered to make people lose hope entirely. And over time, the prisoners become what the movie calls institutionalized.
Let's pause on that word, actually, because it's vital. Institutionalized.
What does that mean in this context?
It means the prison slowly erases your ability to exist outside of it. You forget how to make decisions for yourself.
Because the guards tell you when to eat, when to sleep, and when to use the bathroom.
Exactly. If you stay there long enough, the outside world becomes terrifying, and the prison becomes the only place you feel safe.
Wow. It's like a psychological death.
It is. The prison kills your internal identity long before it kills your physical body.
But Andy Dufresne is a profound anomaly here.
Total anomaly. You would logically expect a wealthy banker, a man used to soft beds, clean suits, and respectful colleagues, to be instantly destroyed by this hard, cold, violent place.
Yeah, you'd expect him to cry, to scream at the walls, to fight uselessly, or to simply curl up in a corner and give up.
But he doesn't do any of those things. He stays incredibly calm.
It's almost eerie how calm he is.
It is. He's quiet, observant, and most importantly, he exhibits a terrifying level of patience.
His calmness is almost unnerving to the other prisoners at first. While the environment around him is pure chaos, loud and violent, Andy maintains this impenetrable internal stillness.
He walks the prison yard like a man strolling through a park.
And over time, that stillness becomes his armor. It allows him to think clearly, to take strategic action, and to make very specific connections.
Right, he doesn't isolate himself in his misery. He seeks out a man named Red.
Red is the narrator of our story, right?
Yes, and he is a man who knows how to survive. Red's role in the prison ecosystem is the smuggler.
He's the guy who can get you things from the outside world.
Exactly. Cigarettes, candy, a specific brand of soap. And Andy approaches Red not to complain or to cry, but to make a business transaction.
What does he want?
He asks Red to smuggle in a very specific item, a tiny handheld rock hammer.
The kind a geologist uses to chip at small stones?
Yeah. And Andy tells Red he wants this tiny hammer because he enjoys rock shaping. He wants to find quartz in the prison yard and carve it into little chess pieces to keep his mind occupied.
That sounds reasonable enough. So Red agrees and they make the trade.
And through this initial transaction, a deep friendship slowly begins to form between them.
Over the next 2 decades, we watch Andy slowly change the very fabric of the prison itself. He doesn't just survive, he transforms his environment.
He does. He uses the very skills that got him his job on the outside. He overhears the brutal Captain Hadley complaining about taxes.
Oh, the scene is so tense.
It really is. And Andy steps in, risking being thrown off a roof, literally to offer financial advice.
And soon, Andy is doing the taxes for every guard in the prison.
And eventually, he is laundering dirty money for the corrupt prison warden himself.
In exchange for this highly illegal financial work, Andy gains a measure of physical protection.
But he doesn't just use this leverage for himself. He uses it to advocate for his fellow inmates.
This is where we see the incredible depth of his character. He becomes obsessed with expanding the prison's tiny, pathetic library.
For years, he writes a letter every single week to the state government, begging for funds to buy books.
Every single week. And when they finally send him a small check and tell him to stop writing, what does he do?
He starts writing 2 letters a week.
That is amazing. He eventually builds the best prison library in New England, and he uses those books to teach other prisoners how to read, helping them earn their high school diplomas behind bars.
Notice the mechanism of what Andy is doing here. He is systematically creating a pocket of civilization within a place of absolute barbarism.
That's a powerful way to put it.
By giving these men access to education and literature, he is giving them back a piece of their humanity. He's giving them a form of power that the guards cannot physically beat out of them.
But while we, the audience, are watching Andy calmly build libraries, listen to music, and do the warden's taxes, we are completely unaware of the massive, secret layer of action happening out of sight.
Which leads us to one of the greatest climaxes in movie history.
After nearly 20 years in this terrible place, Andy's cell is found completely empty one morning. He has just vanished.
The big reveal, the secret he kept hidden for 2 decades, is that he's been every single night using that tiny little rock hammer to chip away at the concrete wall behind a poster of an actress in his cell.
For 20 years, he dug a tunnel.
He crawled through that tunnel, broke into the prison sewage pipe, and crawled through 500 yards of absolute filth.
Just unspeakable conditions.
To emerge on the other side into a rainstorm as a free man.
It is a breathtaking revelation because it completely recontextualizes the entire movie.
All those years of quiet patience, the slow, methodical behavior, the strange calmness, it was all building toward this one singular, impossible goal.
He had a secret mission the entire time. And the core takeaway, the powerful thematic idea that the movie leaves us with, is articulated in a letter Andy leaves for Red.
He writes, "Hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies."
In short, hope can set you free.
Hope can set you free.
Now, looking at Andy's journey with that tiny rock hammer, I cannot help but draw a massive, direct analogy to the process of learning English or any new language for the listener tuning in right now.
It fits so perfectly.
It really does. Think about the physical reality of what Andy did. He had a massive, thick stone wall separating him from his freedom, and his only tool was a hammer the size of a toothbrush.
Right. If you hit a stone wall with a tiny hammer for one day, you make a dent so small you can barely even see it.
Exactly. And learning a language is exactly the same slow, hidden work.
When you sit down for 20 minutes to study vocabulary, or when you listen to this deep dive while washing the dishes, you are taking a tiny rock hammer and hitting the massive, intimidating wall of a foreign language.
In the short term, after one day or 1 week, it feels like you aren't making any progress at all. The wall looks exactly the same.
You still stumble over your words. You still forget grammar rules.
And the brilliance of the analogy is the dust.
Oh, the dust, yes. Explain that.
Andy couldn't just leave the rock dust on his floor, or the guards would see it. So he put the dust in his pockets, walked out into the prison yard, and quietly let it fall out of his pant legs into the dirt.
It was completely invisible to everyone around him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you are learning English, the progress is often invisible. Your friends might not notice you were getting better. You might not even notice you were getting better.
But day after day, month after month, you are hollowing out that wall.
That slow, hidden, unglamorous work eventually leads to a breakthrough. It leads to the freedom to travel, the freedom to connect with people from different cultures,
And the mental freedom to understand the world in a completely new way.
It's the perfect metaphor for language acquisition because it emphasizes the requirement of endurance over the desire for instant gratification.
It really does. But I want to explore a deeper psychological point about Andy's journey, which ties directly into how we process our own difficult tasks.
Oh, please do. Let's push into the psychology of it.
We discussed Andy's incredible calmness when he first arrived at Shawshank. The question is, where does that calmness actually come from?
That's a really good question.
Does it come from the fact that he is truly innocent, like that his soul is clean and he knows he didn't commit the murder so his conscience is at peace?
Okay, that's one option.
Or does his calmness come from his secret plan? Does it come from the moment he acquired that rock hammer and realized, I have a project. I am actively working on my escape?
Oh, that is a fantastic question. Let me push back on the first option, actually.
Go for it.
I don't think innocence alone is enough to give you that kind of calm. There are other innocent men in Shawshank, we know, because Red jokes about it, but there are genuinely people there who were framed or made mistakes, and the prison still crushes them.
That's true.
If you know you are innocent, but you are still locked in a cage being beaten and starved, I think your innocence would actually drive you crazy.
It would make you furious at the injustice of the world.
Right. You would be screaming at the guards every day that you don't belong there.
That is highly perceptive. Innocence without agency just breeds deep, toxic resentment. It makes you a permanent victim of an unfair universe.
So Andy's calmness has to come from his agency. It comes from the secret plan.
Exactly. The fact that he has a project, the digging, means he is no longer just a passive victim of his circumstances.
Every single night when he chips away at that wall, he is asserting his own existence. He is taking control of his future, even if that future is 20 years away.
The physical act of planning and working gives him the psychological armor to survive the daily abuse.
Knowing what you are working toward gives you the strength to endure the pain of today. It is such a profound lesson.
If you have a why, you can survive almost anyhow.
Wow. So now that we have deeply unpacked the narrative of the story and the psychology of our protagonist, let's transition into exploring the core philosophical themes.
We are going to look at what we call the 4 pillars of the film, and we are going to break these complex ideas down using deliberate, powerful English.
This is a vital exercise for you listening right now. Moving from describing physical actions like digging a tunnel or reading a book to discussing abstract concepts like hope and freedom, that is the bridge to true language fluency.
It requires a completely different type of cognitive processing.
Exactly. So, pillar number 1, hope. We just mentioned it as the ultimate takeaway of the film, but what does it actually mean to have hope in a place where the environment actively tries to destroy it?
Because hope in Shawshank is very different from hope in the outside world.
That is a crucial distinction. In our daily lives, we often use hope to describe a cheerful, passive wish, like, I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow, or I hope I get a promotion.
It's a very light, floating feeling.
But in Shawshank, hope is not cheerful. It is a fierce, desperate, almost stubborn refusal to accept the darkness as permanent.
In fact, Red, Andy's closest friend, is terrified of hope. Early in the movie, Red looks at Andy and says, "Let me tell you something, my friend. Hope is a dangerous thing. Hope can drive a man insane. It's got no use on the inside."
Why does Red think it's dangerous? Because from Red's perspective, survival requires accepting your reality.
If you keep hoping that the doors will open, and you wake up every single morning staring at the same iron bars, the daily disappointment will just crush your mind.
It hurts too much to hope for something you believe you can never have. Red survives by basically killing his own hope.
Precisely. Red has institutionalized his own mind to protect his heart. But Andy proves the exact opposite.
Andy demonstrates that hope is the only thing that keeps you from losing your mind.
There is a magnificent scene where Andy locks himself in the warden's office and plays a record of a beautiful Italian opera over the prison loudspeakers.
I love that scene. Every single prisoner in the yard stops moving and just listens to these soaring, beautiful voices.
And Red narrates that scene by saying he has no idea what the Italian women were singing about, but that for those 3 minutes, every man at Shawshank felt free.
Andy risked being thrown into solitary confinement, which is a dark, windowless box, just to play that music.
And when he gets out of solitary, he tells the guys it was worth it because he had the music in his head and in his heart.
He tells them, there are places in this world that aren't made out of stone. There's something inside that they can't get to, that they can't touch. That's yours.
That is the definition of hope in this story. It is an active choice to hold on to the belief that your internal world has value and that beauty still exists, even if you are surrounded by concrete.
Which leads us perfectly into pillar number 2, patience. Because hope without patience is just a fantasy that will burn you out.
Patience. We mentioned the timeline earlier. 20 years. 2 entire decades.
For context, 20 years is the time it takes for a baby to be born, grow up, go through all of school, and become an adult. Andy spent that entire time in a cage. How does the movie redefine patience for us?
Well, we usually think of patience as the ability to sit still and wait. Like we tell a child to be patient in a waiting room, which just means stop moving and do nothing.
I'm right. Just endure the boredom.
But Andy's patience is profoundly active. It is defined by slow, quiet, consistent action. He is not waiting for the warden to change his mind.
He is not waiting for a lawyer to save him.
He is working. The power of slow, quiet, consistent action is that it overcomes obstacles that seem mathematically impossible.
A tiny rock hammer cannot break a wall in a day, a week, or a year. But over 20 years applied consistently, the friction of that tiny hammer defeats the solid stone.
It is the ultimate lesson in the compound interest of effort. Patience isn't doing nothing. Patience is having the discipline to do the small, boring, repetitive things every single day without demanding an immediate reward.
And again, to apply this to our listener, if you start learning English and you expect to be speaking fluently in a month, you lack this kind of patience.
When you inevitably fail to become fluent in 30 days, your frustration will make you quit entirely.
But if you accept that fluency is a 20-year tunnel and your job is just to swing the hammer for 15 minutes today, you cannot fail. You will eventually break through.
That is exactly right. You have to fall in love with the process of swinging the hammer rather than obsessing over the light at the end of the tunnel.
So true.
Now, moving to pillar number 3, friendship. The bond between Andy and Red is the emotional anchor of the entire narrative.
And it is fascinating because it is not an easy or obvious friendship.
No, not at all. They are completely different men from completely different worlds.
Andy is a wealthy, educated, white-collar banker. Red is a street-smart smuggler who has spent his entire adult life in prison. So how do they connect?
The analysis of this friendship usually breaks down into 3 components: trust, respect, and emotional vulnerability.
Let's unpack the first one. Trust.
Trust is the rarest and most dangerous currency in a maximum security prison. If you trust the wrong person, it could literally cost you your life.
Their trust is not given instantly. It is built transactionally at first. Right?
Exactly. Red is a man of his word. When he says he will acquire the rock hammer, he delivers it without asking dangerous questions.
And Andy, in turn, trusts Red not to betray him to the guards or other inmates. Over years, this transactional trust deepens into mutual respect.
And that respect is based on observing each other's character. Red respects Andy's quiet dignity.
He respects that Andy doesn't complain, and that he fights back against the brutality with intellect rather than violence.
And Andy respects Red's deep, pragmatic wisdom. Red isn't formally educated like Andy, but he understands human nature better than anyone else in the prison.
This mutual respect creates a safe space for the final component, emotional vulnerability.
In an environment where showing any emotion is viewed as weakness, Andy and Red eventually share their deepest fears, their regrets about the crimes that brought them there, and their secret dreams for the future.
There is a deeply moving scene where Andy tells Red about a specific beach in Mexico called Zihuatanejo, where he wants to go if he ever gets out.
By sharing that dream, he is placing his most fragile hope in Red's hands. They keep each other human.
It is a profound depiction of platonic love between two men. And their friendship is what ultimately saves Red's life, which brings us to pillar number 4, freedom.
The movie forces us to realize that freedom is a multi-layered concept. It is not just physical. It is not merely the act of walking out of the prison gates.
Freedom, in its truest sense, is mental. It is the internal belief that you have a future.
This is perhaps the most difficult concept to fully grasp. Physical freedom is external. It is the absence of literal chains or bars.
But mental freedom is the ability to close your eyes and know that your mind is sovereign, that your soul cannot be imprisoned by your environment.
We see the tragedy of physical freedom without mental freedom in the character of Brooks.
Oh, Brooks. That part is so sad.
It really is. Brooks is an elderly prisoner who has been in Shawshank for 50 years. When he is finally paroled and physically released into the world, he is completely terrified.
His mind is so institutionalized that he cannot handle the freedom. The outside world is too fast, too loud, and he has no purpose.
Tragically, he takes his own life because he was physically free, but mentally he was still locked in a cage.
But wait, let me push back on this, or rather explore the difficulty of it. We talk about mental freedom as this beautiful goal. But isn't mental freedom actually significantly harder to achieve than physical freedom?
I mean,
Because I think about an immigrant or an English learner who has moved to London or New York or Sydney. They have achieved the physical freedom. They can walk into any coffee shop, go to any cinema, and interact with native speakers.
right.
But they feel entirely trapped by a language barrier. They feel locked inside their own heads, paralyzed by the fear of making a grammar mistake or being misunderstood.
That's a very real feeling.
For that person, wouldn't you agree that achieving the mental freedom to just speak, to allow themselves to sound foolish while they learn, is much harder than physically getting on the airplane to move there?
That is a phenomenal application of the theme. Yes, absolutely. Mental freedom requires tearing down walls that you have built yourself, which is always harder than walking through a door someone else opened.
Yeah.
For the language learner you described, the physical environment of an English-speaking city is just geography. The mental prison is the fear of judgment.
It is the anxiety of sounding incompetent.
Exactly. Mental freedom for that learner is the courage to speak with a flawed accent, using incorrect grammar, and realizing that their value as a human being is not diminished by it.
It is releasing the fear, believing you have a future of fluency, and forgiving yourself for the mistakes you make today is the ultimate mental escape.
Wow, beautifully said.
So to every single listener out there who feels trapped behind the invisible wall of a new language, you have to give yourself permission to be free right now. Keep chipping away at the vocabulary, but do not wait until you are perfect to start speaking.
Your mental freedom comes the exact moment you decide that the fear of making a mistake will no longer control you.
Yes. And to help our listeners chip away at that wall with more confidence, we need to equip them with the proper tools.
We've been discussing these complex philosophical themes: hope, patience, institutionalization. But if you want to discuss this movie or any movie with your friends or colleagues, you need specific technical vocabulary.
Let's do exactly that. We are shifting gears into the filmmaker's toolkit. We are going to systematically walk through the practical vocabulary of cinema.
But we aren't just going to read dictionary definitions. We're going to explore how these words actually function by applying them directly to the Shawshank Redemption.
Let's start with the core movie words. The first word is blockbuster.
Blockbuster. Historically, during the golden age of Hollywood, a blockbuster meant a movie that was so incredibly popular that the line of people waiting to buy tickets wrapped all the way around the city block. It busted the block.
I never knew that's where the word came from.
Isn't that interesting? But today, the definition has shifted slightly. It refers to a movie produced with a massive budget, heavily marketed, and aimed at massive commercial success. Think superhero movies or giant science fiction spectacles.
Now, here is the ironic and fascinating thing about Shawshank. When it was released in theaters in 1994, it was the exact opposite of a blockbuster. It actually failed at the box office.
It didn't make enough money to cover its costs.
People saw a movie about a depressing prison and decided not to buy a ticket. But over the next 10 years, through word of mouth, VHS rentals, and playing constantly on cable television, it found its audience and became universally beloved.
Which perfectly illustrates the next word, classic.
Oh, classic.
While a blockbuster is defined by its immediate financial success and cultural noise, a classic is defined by endurance. A classic is a piece of art that stands the test of time.
It might be 10, 20, or 50 years old, but its themes remain relevant, and its quality is undeniable. Shawshank transcended its box office failure to become a definitive cinematic classic.
The next vital word is plot. The plot is the structural backbone of the story. It is the sequence of cause and effect events that happen from the opening scene to the closing credits.
So if someone asks you, what is the plot of Shawshank? You don't talk about hope or freedom.
Right. You say, a banker is wrongly convicted of murder, goes to prison, uses his financial skills to survive, and eventually spends 20 years digging a tunnel to escape. That sequence of actions is the plot.
And the plot is brought to life by the cast and the director. The cast refers to the collective group of actors in the film, not just the star, but everyone on screen.
In Shawshank, the cast features Tim Robbins as Andy and Morgan Freeman as Red.
The director, on the other hand, is the creative general of the entire project. The director of this film, Frank Darabont, didn't act in it, but he made every single decision about how the plot would be executed.
Let's look at how the director uses another element, the soundtrack. The soundtrack is the music layered underneath the visual action.
But it's not just background noise, right?
Not at all. A masterful director uses the soundtrack to manipulate the audience's emotions subconsciously. In Shawshank, the soundtrack during the violent scenes is harsh and minimal, but when Andy escapes and stands in the rain, the soundtrack swells with massive, triumphant orchestral music.
The music tells your brain exactly how to feel before the actors even speak.
And that visual action is captured through cinematography. This is a robust technical word. Cinematography is the art and science of capturing the images on camera.
It encompasses the lighting, the color palette, the camera angles, and the movement of the lens.
How does the cinematography work in Shawshank specifically?
Oh, it is brilliant. The cinematographer uses a very cold, desaturated color palette for the prison interiors. Lots of grays, cold blues, and harsh shadows to make the environment feel oppressive and dead.
The camera is often positioned looking down on the prisoners to make them look small and trapped, while looking up at the warden to make him look powerful.
But contrast that with the cinematography at the very end of the movie, when Red finally meets Andy on the beach in Mexico.
Suddenly, the screen is flooded with vibrant, warm colors, bright blue ocean, golden sand, bright sunlight.
The cinematography visually represents the journey from despair to hope.
That is exactly why cinematography is an art form. It's not just pointing a camera, it's painting with light to tell the story. Let's move to the written word, the script.
The script is the blueprint of the movie. It is the document containing all the dialogue the actors will say, along with descriptions of the action, written long before the camera ever turns on.
From the script, we identify our characters. The first is the protagonist.
The protagonist is the central character, the person whose journey the audience follows and who drives the story forward. Andy Dufresne is our clear protagonist. We experience the prison through his eyes, and we are rooting for him to succeed.
And the opposing force is the antagonist. The antagonist is the obstacle standing in the protagonist's way.
Now, in many movies, the antagonist is simply a bad guy, a villain with a weapon. In Shawshank, Warden Norton and Captain Hadley are definitely human antagonists.
But you could strongly argue that the true antagonist of the film is the prison itself. The stone walls, the passing of time, and the psychological weight of despair are the actual forces Andy has to defeat.
An antagonist doesn't have to be a person. It can be an institution or a concept.
That is a very sophisticated literary analysis. Now let's address two terms that often cause confusion: the climax and the plot twist.
Yes, I really need you to clarify this for me, and I'm sure for our listeners as well. I get them mixed up. A plot twist is a massive surprise that changes the story, right?
Correct.
And the climax is the most exciting, tense part of the movie. But in Shawshank, the moment we discover Andy's cell is empty and the warden tears the poster off the wall to reveal the tunnel, that is a massive surprise because we had no idea he was digging.
Total shock.
But it's also the most exciting part of the movie. So is the escape a plot twist, a climax, or both? How do they differ?
It is entirely understandable to confuse them, because Shawshank provides a very rare example where the two cinematic devices happen almost simultaneously.
Okay, so how do we separate them?
A plot twist is defined entirely by subverting the audience's expectations. It relies on withholding information and then revealing it to change the context of everything that came before.
Okay. And a climax.
A climax is defined by emotional and narrative tension. It is the peak of the conflict, the moment where the protagonist either succeeds or fails.
So they operate on different axes. One is about surprise, the other is about tension.
Exactly. In many movies, a plot twist might happen halfway through the story to change the direction of the narrative, leading to a climax later.
But in Shawshank, the revelation of the tunnel is the plot twist, the brilliant surprise.
The moment the warden throws the rock through the poster, the twist is executed. But that twist instantly triggers the climax. We immediately jump into a flashback sequence showing Andy crawling through the sewage pipe during a thunderstorm.
The tension peaks as we watch him struggle to break the pipe and crawl to freedom. So the twist is the revelation of the tunnel, and the climax is the harrowing physical escape through the pipe.
They are back to back, which is why the ending is so legendary.
Okay, that clarifies it beautifully. The twist is the surprise discovery. The climax is the tense action of the escape. Let's cover a couple of everyday, useful words for discussing media. The first is relatable.
If a character or a situation is relatable, it means you can easily understand and connect with their feelings because you have experienced something similar in your own life.
Now, most of us haven't been in a maximum security prison, so the setting isn't relatable. But the feeling of being trapped in a bad situation or the desire for a true friend, those emotions are highly relatable.
And the last one here is binge watch. The outline lists this and means to watch multiple episodes of a show back to back in one sitting, like watching 6 hours of a Netflix show on a Sunday.
But I have to point out a usage rule here. You cannot binge watch a 2-hour movie like Shawshank. The vocabulary only applies to episodic television. You can watch a movie, you can rewatch a classic, but you binge watch a series.
That is an important grammatical distinction. Using the correct verb for the correct format makes you sound like a native speaker.
Exactly. Now that we have this rich technical toolkit, We can talk about the cinematography, the protagonist, and the climax. We need to elevate our language even further.
Because knowing the technical terms is great for a film class, but in real life, with your friends, you want to talk about how a movie made you feel.
So let's shift into expressing emotion, focusing heavily on idioms and colloquial expressions.
Idioms are the absolute secret weapon for sounding natural and fluent. An idiom is a phrase where the figurative meaning is different from the literal translation of the words. Let's start with the idiom. Never gets old.
If you look at this literally, you might think it describes a vampire or someone who literally doesn't age.
Right, which sounds weird.
But figuratively, to say something never gets old means it never loses its power to entertain or move you, regardless of how many times you experience it.
Human psychology dictates that we get bored with things. If you eat your favorite meal every day, eventually you will get sick of it.
But if I say, watching the ending of Shawshank never gets old, I'm saying it defies that psychological decay. On the 10th viewing, it is just as magical as the first viewing.
The next idiom is highly visceral. Gives me chills.
Literally, chills are the involuntary shivers and goosebumps you get on your arms and spine when the temperature drops rapidly.
But emotionally, when we say a piece of art gives me chills, we mean it is so profoundly moving or beautiful or intense that your body physically reacts to the emotion.
I can give a perfect example of this. The scene where Andy escapes the sewage pipe, rips off his prison shirt, and stands bare-chested in the pouring rain, raising his arms to the sky while the thunder crashes and the music swells. Just describing it right now, I literally have goosebumps on my arms.
That scene gives me chills too.
Yeah.
The emotional triumph is so huge that my body reacts to it.
That is the perfect usage. Our next idiom is a hyphenated adjective, top-notch.
This simply means excellent, of the highest possible quality. The origin comes from the physical act of measuring things on a stick by cutting notches into the wood. The highest mark, the highest level of quality, was the top notch.
So you wouldn't say the actor was very good. To sound fluent, you say Morgan Freeman's voiceover narration in this movie is absolutely top-notch.
It's such a great, casual way to express high praise. The next one is a bit more modern, very popular in current conversation. Hits different.
To say something hits different means it impacts you in a unique, profound, or surprising way compared to other similar things, or compared to how it impacted you in the past. It emphasizes a special resonance.
Let's explore the mechanics of this one, because it is fascinating. Can a movie hit different the second time you watch it, just because you have changed?
Absolutely, and that is often exactly when native speakers use this phrase. Let's say you watched the Shawshank Redemption when you were 15 years old.
At 15, you probably processed it simply as a cool story about a clever guy escaping a bad place. You enjoyed the plot.
But imagine watching it again when you are 45. By 45, you have experienced real life. You have faced unfairness in your career. You have lost loved ones. You have felt trapped by circumstances.
When you watch Andy endure 20 years of unfairness with quiet patience, it doesn't just entertain you anymore. It resonates with your own pain.
The movie hits different because your accumulated life experience has given you a new emotional receptor for its themes.
That is beautiful. The art didn't change, the audience changed, so the impact hits different. And that leads perfectly into our final idiom. Sticks with you.
Literally, if something sticks with you, it is coated in glue and attached to your clothing. But figuratively, it means something remains in your consciousness long after the initial experience is over.
It refers to a lingering psychological impact. You finish the movie, you turn off the television, you go to sleep, and 3 days later while you were driving to work, you're still thinking about the concept of institutionalization. The movie stuck with you.
It's exactly like a catchy melody. You hear a song on the radio in the morning, and 12 hours later, you are still humming it. It adhered to your brain.
Or it's like a piece of profound advice from a mentor that you remember 20 years later. The message of hope in Shawshank absolutely sticks with you.
So we have built an incredible vocabulary now. We have the philosophical pillars, the filmmaker's technical toolkit, and the emotional idioms. But having the tools in your toolbox is useless if you don't know how to swing the hammer.
The next step is fluid application. Let's transition into putting all of this into practice. For our listeners to truly benefit, we need to model how these words and idioms flow naturally in unscripted, everyday conversation.
We need to look at the connective tissue, the small words and phrases that native speakers use to glue big ideas together.
Exactly. I don't want to just give you a list of robotic templates to memorize. I want us to just have a natural chat about movies right now, and then we will pause and deconstruct what we just did so you can see the engine working under the hood.
So, If we were just getting coffee and talking, what kind of movies do you usually gravitate toward? Like, if you have a free Saturday night, what are you putting on?
Honestly, I am heavily into dialogue-driven dramas. I can appreciate a massive blockbuster for the visual spectacle, but if the script isn't top-notch and the characters aren't relatable, I lose interest quickly.
Yeah.
I need a movie that has a deeper philosophical message, something that really sticks with me after the credits roll. How about you? What do you think makes a movie truly great?
For me, it's all about the emotional payoff. I think a movie is amazing when it manages to completely subvert your expectations, but still feels earned. Like a plot twist that isn't just a cheap trick, but actually deepens the theme.
Right.
When a director can combine a brilliant script with a soundtrack that perfectly captures the mood and build to a climax that literally gives me chills, that is when a movie becomes a classic for me. Shawshank does exactly that, which is why it never gets old.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. It is the gold standard for that kind of emotional payoff.
Okay, let's pause and freeze that conversation. Let's take a look under the hood and analyze exactly what just happened there, because we used a ton of our target vocabulary without sounding like we were reading from a textbook.
When you asked me what I like, how did I respond?
You started by saying, I am heavily into dialogue-driven dramas. The phrase I'm into is the most natural, native way to express a preference or a hobby.
It creates a physical metaphor that you are immersed inside the subject. Saying, I like dramas sounds a bit basic, like a beginner. Saying I am into dramas sounds relaxed and fluent.
And notice how you contrasted your preference. You used our vocabulary words fluidly. You said you appreciate a blockbuster, but if the script isn't top-notch and the characters aren't relatable, you don't care.
I managed to weave 4 target words into one sentence to express a highly nuanced opinion.
And when you asked me what I thought, I didn't just give a one-word answer. I used a specific structure. I said, I think a movie is amazing when.
This is a brilliant framework for the listener to borrow. I think X is Y when because Z, it forces you to justify your opinions, which extends the conversation.
And you seamlessly integrated the terms plot twist, climax, and the idioms gives me chills and never gets old. But perhaps the most important part of that entire exchange was the very end. The conversational glue.
Yes. Let's talk about the glue. When you finished your long explanation about why you love Shawshank, I didn't just sit there in silence and I didn't launch immediately into a new topic. I validated what you said.
You said, yeah, same, absolutely. This is something English learners often miss. Native English speakers are terrified of silence in a conversation.
If you speak for a minute and I just stare at you, it feels incredibly awkward. So we use constant tiny acknowledgement phrases to show we are actively listening and agreeing.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. Oh, nice. Totally. These micro phrases are the social lubrication of English. They tell your conversation partner, I hear you, I agree with you, and we are on the same wavelength.
It is the difference between an interrogation and a friendly chat. If you only ask questions and answer questions, you sound like a police officer.
If you use filler and agreement phrases like absolutely or yeah, same, you sound like a friend having a coffee. This is how you take your English from rigid and academic to warm and relational.
So having modeled this, we want to hand the microphone over to you, the listener. We are going to enter our interactive listener engagement segment. We have 5 discussion questions.
We're going to pose them to you rhetorically. Think about how you would answer them in your own life, and then we will discuss how we might approach the answer, highlighting the structures and vocabulary you can use.
Think of this as a mental rehearsal. Question number 1. If you were at a dinner party and someone asks you, what's the best movie you've watched recently? How do you respond without just saying it was good?
The goal here is to elevate the detail. You want to pick one specific aspect of the film to praise.
You might say, the best movie I've seen recently was a massive sci-fi blockbuster. I usually don't love action movies, but the cinematography was absolutely top-notch, and the visual effects gave me chills.
By highlighting the cinematography, you sound sophisticated, and the idiom brings the emotion. Exactly.
Yeah.
Question number 2. This is a great debate topic. Do you prefer watching movies at home or in the cinema?
Now, I want to explore the nuances of this before we answer, because the environment drastically changes the artistic experience.
If a director spends $50 million on a soaring orchestral soundtrack and sweeping epic cinematography, isn't it almost a crime to watch that on a small television in your living room while you're looking at your phone?
It really is a shame.
Yeah.
But conversely, if the movie is a quiet, intense drama focused purely on the dialogue and the script, the intimacy of your living room might actually be the better environment. What are your thoughts on that?
It is a profound debate about the nature of consumption. A cinema forces sensory immersion and demands your undivided attention. It respects the scale of the director's vision.
But answering the question conversationally, a learner could use our comparative tools. They might say, it completely depends on the genre. For a massive blockbuster, I need the cinema because the sound design hits different on big speakers.
But for a relatable drama with a deep script, watching it at home on my couch never gets old. Brilliant use of hits different.
Question number 3. What movie inspired you the most? When we use the word inspired, we are looking for a piece of art that actually motivated you to change your behavior or shift your perspective on your own life.
To answer this powerfully, you connect the narrative of the movie to a personal action.
The movie that inspired me the most is undoubtedly The Shawshank Redemption. The protagonist's journey showed me the immense value of patience.
The message that slow, consistent action can break down any wall really stuck with me, and it changed how I approach my own long-term goals.
Question number 4 is about your artistic diet. Do you like classic movies or new releases more? The difference between watching something that was engineered for today's audience versus something that has survived for decades.
Here, you can discuss the concept of endurance. I am definitely more into classic movies. New releases are exciting and have great visual effects, but the plot of a true classic never gets old.
Classics rely on strong dialogue and relatable human themes rather than just explosions, which I find much more meaningful.
And our final rhetorical question, question number 5, what makes a movie unforgettable for you? What is the specific alchemy, the magic ingredient, that elevates a movie from something you watch to something that becomes a part of your memory?
This is where you bring all the vocabulary together for a grand finale. For me, a movie is unforgettable when the director perfectly balances a brilliant script with a top-notch cast.
If the story has a profound, deep message, and the climax is powerful enough to give me chills, that movie will definitely stick with me for a lifetime.
These questions are phenomenal tools for practicing your conversational fluency. When you have a quiet moment today, whether you are driving, cooking, or taking a walk, I highly encourage you to answer these 5 questions out loud to yourself.
Whisper the answers if you have to. Force your mouth to form the words top-notch and hits different. Active physical speaking is the only way to build muscle memory for a new language.
It is the exact equivalent of swinging the wrong hammer. Listening to us is planning the escape. Speaking out loud is actually digging the tunnel.
What an incredible analogy to bring us toward the close of our deep dive today. We have covered a truly massive landscape of language and philosophy.
We really have. We started with the narrative summary of a banker wrongly convicted and thrown into a cold, brutal prison.
We unpacked the profound philosophical pillars of fierce hope, relentless patience, the currency of friendship, and the difficult pursuit of mental freedom.
We built a comprehensive filmmaker's vocabulary toolkit, explored visceral native idioms, and deconstructed the social glue of natural conversation.
As we transition into our outro, what is the final overarching summary we can offer to our listeners?
If we synthesize everything we have explored today, the final undeniable takeaway is this. The Shawshank Redemption is far more than just an entertaining fictional story about a prison break. It is a masterclass in human resilience.
And today, we have used it as a masterclass in linguistic empowerment. The technical vocabulary of cinema, the emotional idioms we discussed, they all serve one purpose: to give you the words to articulate the core human experience of overcoming darkness.
The movie stands as an eternal reminder that no matter how oppressive your environment becomes, no matter how thick the walls around you seem, hope is always, always worth holding on to.
Hope is always worth holding on to. It is such a resonant, powerful phrase, and it brings us full circle right back to the philosophical question we posed in our opening hook.
We asked, what if this story was not about escaping a physical prison, but about escaping despair?
The despair, the hopelessness, the fear of failure, that is the concrete darkness. And hope is the tiny, sharp rock hammer we use to slowly break out of it.
Exactly. And the English language you are learning, the vocabulary you acquired today, is simply another tool you are forging to break down the walls of miscommunication, isolation, and limitation in your own life.
So before we sign off, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought, something to deeply mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
We spent a lot of time analyzing Andy Dufresne's specific method, his slow, quiet, unglamorous, patient action, chipping away at a solid stone wall, pockets full of dust, for 20 agonizingly long years.
I want you to look at your own life right now and ask yourself, what is the wall standing in your way?
We all have one.
We do. Where in your own life do you need to apply that exact brand of slow, quiet, patient action to achieve your own version of freedom?
Maybe your wall is mastering the English language so you can get that promotion. Maybe your wall is learning a completely new skill to change careers.
Maybe your wall is doing the slow, painful, emotional work of rebuilding a fractured relationship with a family member.
Whatever your specific wall is, the lesson of Shawshank is that you do not have to blow it up with dynamite all at once. You don't have to be perfect tomorrow.
You just have to pick up your tiny rock hammer and chip away at it for 15 minutes today. Just a little bit of dust in the yard every single day.
That is the ultimate, enduring truth of the human experience. Small, seemingly insignificant actions, when fueled by an unbroken hope and applied consistently over time, will inevitably create massive, life-altering change.
Thank you so incredibly much for spending this time with us and staying until the very end of this expansive deep dive. We know we covered a tremendous amount of intellectual and linguistic ground today, but you did the hard work.
You paid attention, you engaged with the material, and your English, and perhaps your perspective on your own challenges, is undeniably stronger because of it.
We are always here to help you upgrade your life, one word, one story, and one deep dive at a time.
Keep practicing your vocabulary, keep holding on to hope, and whatever you do, keep chipping away at that wall.
Take care of yourselves, and we will see you again soon. Remember, you might feel like you are just sitting alone in the dark right now, swinging at solid rock, but you never know when you're going to break through the pipe and step out into the rain. Keep that rock hammer swinging.